Hey, it's Mazzy. Welcome back to the channel. Two wonderfully disjointed, perfect, well, maybe not quite, double rock and roll albums, pop albums. A lot of variety on these two records. Two records that were put out by bands at the height of their popularity. One hugely successful. The other one actually successful, but in relationship to the previous massive record was a disappointment to some. And I love both these records. I love that they have so much going on, okay? You have a handful of writers coming together, working separately, disjointed as it seems on the surface. Well, maybe actually as you listen it will be disjointed, but for some reason these albums work. And I personally dislike when I read on these forums and these discussion groups when people say, how do you make these albums perfect one albums? Take these out. I don't think any of them should be stripped down and reduced to one album. Even the producer of one said, yeah, it would have been a better single album. But I present to you two of the greatest double disjointed rock albums in history, and they came out 11 years apart. Looking back on it, it seems like they were eons apart. 11 years, I guess, is a good time, but they're obvious choices. By now, if you haven't guessed what they are, I don't know, you don't even know anything about rock and roll, or you're not a record collector or listener or music lover. I'm really picking on you, aren't I, those of you? One is the most obvious record, and it's the Beatles' White Album, or what I would refer to as I was growing up and working in the record store and the record business, SWBO 101. I know that it was like the first catalog number, even before I got my job in the record store, that I remembered from the American. That's the capital version. But I'm not going to showcase it, but really I'm talking about the music and the whole conceptual side of these two records. But I want to show off my three original UK top loaders, or very close to the originals. This is a stereo top loader. This is a stereo top loader. And I finally, a year ago, August, my trip to the UK, I found a mono top loader. Now, what's the top loader? Basically, the opening's on top. They didn't last long. I don't know specifically, those of you who really know Discogs and follow the history in the UK of these albums. There are a lot of freakles, freakies, more freaky than I am and know more about those details. So my guess is after the first year, they did, maybe even after the first couple of pressings, they discarded the top loader and went for the normal side loaders like most records. And obviously, in the UK, they had the black inner sleeves. I still have the black inner sleeves, but they are in beautifully polylined sleeves now. And of course, they were numbered right there and embossed, I should say. Debossed is negative, embossed is on top of the Beatles. There are people that don't get this cover art still. Richard Hamilton, the modernist artist in Britain, was brought in for this project by Paul McCartney, and he did a wonderful job. I like the simplicity of this. Yoko had nothing to do with it, even though it seems so Yoko minimal. It was Paul McCartney, and of course Richard Hamilton also designed the poster that comes with it. I just love that it's simply called The Beatles. It's self-titled album by the Beatles. It's not called the White Album, but obviously the White Album is what it's known by today. 1968, November 1968. A wonderful double Expansive Christmas release. Now, I have somewhere in a box of tchotchkes, I have Beatle magazine and posters and all kinds of stuff somewhere. And I don't know if other stations around the country did this at the time. The AM station, one of the AM stations in San Francisco, either KYA or KFRC, you know, in those days, they always put out, you'd find them in record stores, the actual printed, they would open up like a trifold or something, top 30 list, okay? The top 30 list of the week. Every week, I'd go to my local record shop, music store, and pick up the KYA KFRC Top 30 Countdown. And one week, they put it out with all the songs from the White Album. There were 30 songs on this album from 1 to 30. Obviously, those weren't the hits. They didn't do it in any kind of order. They just listed as a kind of a promo. I don't know if they got co-op dollars from Capitol Records in those days, but it was kind of a cool thing to get that top 30 sheet and sing all the songs on this album. Now, this is a story I've told on one of my massive Beatle stories going back. I knew this was coming out, and the local radio station, KSAN, said that they were going to play the entire new Beatle album at a certain time, a certain day. And it was when I was in high school, just started high school, and it was during high school. I had this rig, I had this tape recorder, reel-to-reel tape recorder, and I don't remember exactly how I did it, but I set it up with a timer on record, power off, at the certain time of the day. My recording, my reel-to-reel, was there ready to record the entire album. And I think at the time I must have put it on the slow speed, unfortunately. But, so I would get a preview of the record. This might have been a couple weeks before the release. And this is one of the few Beatle records. I think Sgt. Pepper was first, that there was no upfront single release. No singles off this, at least at the time. In the 70s, I think they put Back in the USSR as a single. But I recorded it, got home from school, and I had the entire Beatle album for a week or two prior to the release, which was cool in those days. Now things are dropped and internet, and there's releases, and there's secret downloads and all kinds of stuff. And nothing's a secret now. And it wasn't a secret, but radio had played it. Of course, the radio station would play it throughout the week. But it was so great having the entire record. And I had a garage band then. We had a band, and we learned how to play Why Don't We Do It in the Road and Your Blues. Basically the two easy standard progression songs, and our band played them. Like I remember we played at Stonestown Shopping Center right next to San Francisco State College. We were playing at a dog show out in the parking lot, and it was an event they hired us for. We actually got paid for a gig. A few gigs we got paid for. And we said we were going to play a song from the upcoming Beatles album. When we played those two songs, nobody knew. Nobody gave a crap about them. But it was a fun memory, and having that record or having that recording of this album at the time is so great. Now, I could go through every track here and bored you silly, because if you haven't heard this, obviously you haven't heard it. I am still partial to the stereo record. I didn't hear the mono record, the mono mix, for many years. And of course, these were the days. This is that 1968 period, the transition. Mostly things were in stereo by this point. And I still can't believe that they put all their eggs in the basket of mono and made the stereo on this record as an afterthought by this point. No way. And a lot of records didn't even come out in mono at this point, especially in America. You'd have, that's another story, another chat for another day about mono stereo, that transition in 1968. But the mix is very different in mono. Now, I could pick up and show you the mono here, but it doesn't really matter because it's that same blank white cover. So just remember, one of these is mono, one is stereo. But the mono mix is a tighter rockin' mix and very different. As I recall, the mono doesn't have the whole blisters on my fingers at the end of Helter Skelter. Some of the things are tighter. They're more direct. Some people like it. My friend Todd here, who has a channel, just got the new mono box. Luckily, his copies seem to be flawless or close to flawless. He cut these black things out. Apparently, some people have had damaged copies. But he is falling in love with the mono mix on that. And I think it's a cool thing. And he had never heard it, apparently. So I kind of like when people get into something. And I totally get that. It's kind of like a Sgt. Pepper. Again, another story, another day, a great discussion, mono versus stereo. I tend to be more of a stereo person around this time. And it's not that normal wide stereo, although there is stuff that goes around your head, especially when you get to things like Revolution #9. block that kick, block that kick, all that stuff in there. El Dorado. I love that. And I love El Dorado. And I love, oh, not El Dorado, I love Revolution Number 9. To me, this record is incomplete without it. I love that that's just kind of quirky, like the longest piece of music the Beatles ever put on record. And then after that, you get this over the top, sappy John Lennon song that he gives to Ringo Starr and lets Ringo sing in Good Night. And that ends the record as he whispers and closes it down. But this is an experimental piece. There's sloppiness, there's wackiness to it. Why don't you do it in the road? Paul just grabs a Ringo, goes into the studio and just beats that thing out. And it's fun. Is it a masterpiece? No, that's the point of this. You have country music on this. I always said that my least favorite song of all time by the Beatles is Don't Pass Me By. I think I like the mono better. But I like years later when the Ringo solo album came out, the debut rock album with everyone on it. I love Ringo's song on there, Sunshine Life for Me, with the band backing him up, that George Harrison, I think, wrote for him, as I recall. I loved it. That would have been a great thing here. Now, again, if I start saying about substitution, I'm defeating my original concept of why these albums are perfectly disjointed as they are. Opening up with Back in the USSR, McCartney egging on and emulating the Beach Boys, and what a great song, Dear Prudence, and all that guitar playing, those little guitar licks that Paul and John learned, not licks, but the acoustic guitar finger picking by Donovan when they were with the Maharishi, and there's beautiful, sincere songs of loss of John's Julia. There's the soft as hell version of Long, Long, Long. I love that. And just the ominous recording of that song. Now, the only thing I do like in the remix of this, and I don't usually like any of the remixes. I like the Isher demo versions of this that came out when that remix came out. But I like that they brought up the volume overall on Long, Long, Long. However, on this, there's something amazing how the dynamic is so soft and so down. You got these great George Harrison songs with Piggies, which is really fun, and of course, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, with Eric Clapton. I mean, when was there another artist, a major artist, aside from a horn player or cello player, orchestra, on a Beatle record? You had Eric Clapton. George felt he needed someone to play that. He wasn't that type of guitar player. And I just love that. I love everything about this record. To some, this is their favorite record. It's not my favorite, but it can be sometimes, depending on the mood. Mine is Revolver, but I can totally understand why people love this, because they're breaking a lot of ground. They're influenced by a lot of different genres in here. Happiness is a Warm Gun. It's amazing how many different, was it 2 or 3 different time signatures John splits up in that song. And just a stunning piece of work. Of course, I'm so tired to Martha, My Dear, the great piano playing by Paul on that, a song written about his sheepdog at the time. Birthday, another song. Oh, that's the other song we rehearsed early with our band. Again, all the standard progression rock songs. They're so easy to learn. We certainly weren't going to do Happiness is a Warm Gun. We didn't have the ability to that. But again, I love that you have these Paul McCartney acoustic things that really are so beautiful. I think the most beautiful song on here is Paul McCartney's I Will. It's short, it's sweet, it's succinct, it's to the point, and it's one of the best songs and records he ever made. Blackbird, so great with that his stamping of the foot at the bottom of the mic stand. I just love that. It seems like a click track, doesn't it? No click tracks here. Even Wild Honey Pie. I like the bridges, like little things like that between songs, and even the uncredited song. What's the little bit of song that goes before? No, I forget what it is. Doesn't matter. You're gonna put it in the comments anyway. That little bridge. Can you take me back? Can you take me back? That one. It's kind of a song he's written and they kind of tacked it on. I love the way this record is put together. I love the way this album is sequenced, perfectly sequenced. A lot of people feel side 3 is the big rockin' thing, with obviously with Birthday, with Your Blues. Of course, then it dies down. You get a little break, a little coffee tea, I should say afternoon tea break with Mother Nature's Son. And then you friggin' kick in with Everybody's Got Something to Hide, except for Me and My Monkey, Sexy Sadie, and then, of course, Helter Skelter. I mean, Paul McCartney wanted to do the loudest, rockinest song ever. If you want to hear the Beatles rock, you want to hear the Beatles rock. And that is so great. I'm still dying. I think I've heard some bootlegs and some other release things that was like a 24, 25-minute version of Helter Skelter. That'd be fun. That would be kind of a interesting thing. Of course, Sexy Sadie, he changes the lyrics, John, from Maharishi, you made a fool of everyone. And Dear Prudence, another one of my favorite songs on this album. I love the vibe. I love Lennon's voice, all of them, but John Lennon's voice in particular on this album is so cool. Even the little background vocals of Yoko singing on which is the one to sing a continuing story of Bungalow Bill. But a perfect record, disjointed, yes. But to me, this is one of those records that have influenced so many people. And it holds up today in its wildness. I'm going to say disjointed a million times in this video, but this obtuse rock and roll record that you'd think it wouldn't work on paper, but I think it works beautifully. That leads me to 1979. You do your biggest record of your career, and then in 1979 you put out Tusk. Fleetwood Mac. Obviously Rumors was one of the biggest selling records of the 1970s. That, Hotel California, Frampton Comes Alive, a handful of others. You know it. You've heard about it, you've read about it, you've listened to them, whether you like them or not. When Buckingham Nicks joined Fleetwood Mac and put out that self-titled record in 75, I really liked that record. And I like Rumors. I'm like, how can you not? It's a pop record. I think the people now who diss those records, it's only because they've heard them so much. I mean, 50 years now, just about. Well, 50 years from the self-titled, and then we're coming up, 48 years, whatever it is now, 47 years of Rumors. You couldn't listen to those. I couldn't listen to those records for 30 years. They were overplayed so much. But expectations after Rumors, huge, massive. But what I liked about Fleetwood Mac, I liked all the periods of Fleetwood Mac. I definitely prefer the Peter Green, and even just after Peter Green with Bob Welch, and obviously Jeremy Spencer, and all those great, all the guitar players. And I'm forgetting some of them right now. What's the other guy? In the comments, I'm doing these like spontaneously, so I don't recall everything in the moment. Jeremy Spencer's the one that went to some religious cult, right? Anyway, but then they do this double album. I mean, it almost seems like overindulgent. Both these could be overindulgent. The Beatles' White Album and Tusk. So after that, there was so much expectations. And, a lot of people go overboard. We want to do a double album. We don't want to edit down. We want to do everything. Lindsey Buckingham takes even more control than ever, kind of co-produces this. And I think this is, again, a wonderfully imperfect, perfect, beautiful, disjointed album. I'm not really a fan of the cover, but it's kind of white. It's very similar, right? In a minimalist way. Single sleeve with 2 inserts. Now this I could do without. They have the inserts here, hard inserts, like actual album cover sleeves. And then within that, another insert, okay? Another, I think they spend more money on the cover art and the cover printing. I'm just kidding. But it works. I think it could have been better artwork, personally. And to be honest with you, I don't even know all the history of this. Someone tell me, who's the friggin' dog on here pulling at somebody's pant leg, making those legs wet. Kind of a wet leg, right? Tusk. I think this is a masterpiece. It's a problematic masterpiece, but I wouldn't take anything out of it. Now, what's great about it too, like the White Album, you have all these great songwriters collaborating, working solo, working on their own thing. I mean, one of the songs that seems to be probably the most like, someone's going to say, really? There's no production there. It's sloppy. It seems like they just stuck a demo on there, is What Makes You Think You're the One. I love that drumming. It almost seems like they're sitting out in the other room at the recording studio recording. Lindsey Buckingham sings it. I love that song. Like, Why Can't We Do It in the Road? It's that type of spontaneous song, seemingly. I don't know the history of this album as much as I do of the White Album. Starts out with Over and Over, that beautiful Christine vocal on there. To me, again, I always thought she's the secret sauce. Not even so secret. The more soulful voice. She can be laid back. Even when she gets her R&B legs and hits it up, she's still kind of laid back in that stuff. And some people would call it MOR, but ain't no MOR album. This is like a major artist doing an indie record, what we call indie today. And that is what's brilliant about it. The Ledge, Think About Me, that's classic Fleetwood Mac. Could have been on Rumors or the self-titled. Sarah, of course, is one of those long, beautifully sprawling Stevie Nicks songs. And it's really nice. Again, Stevie Nicks was never my favorite, but I like her in collaboration with everyone else. And she always that's her Rhiannon on this album, as far as I'm concerned. And I love it. Not That Funny. Again, another sloppy piece of Lindsey Buckingham, slop fest that Paul McCartney would have just, tossed off like in 20 minutes or something. But I think it's good. I like that there's the beautifully curated, recorded, prepped song and recorded, and you got something in there not that funny. Some would throw that away. I love it. It's kind of like, not quite My Mummy's Dead by John Lennon, but something that you think, you record this, maybe you're going to cut it out of the album later, but they include it on the album. I think that's great. Sisters of the Moon is beautiful. Angel, of course. Beautiful Child. There is something about the intimacy of Stevie Nicks songs on here. Beautiful Child is a wonderful, wonderful song that kind of builds up on here. Now, Tusk. Tusk is this brilliant piece of music. Is that the one that was recorded with the USC marching band? What a bombastic, percussive, perfect recording, perfect record. I love Tusk, and it's the second to the last track on this record. Incredible. Now, they did a digital mixdown. I think it was recorded... the USC Trojan Marching Band, yeah, appears on Tusk. Recorded live at Dodger Stadium, Chavez Ravine. Oh, man. Great record. Two wonderfully recorded, semi-indie, before indie was a thing, at least not a genre, but a segment of bands and artists, of major artists doing something so self-indulgent, but so forward-thinking, in my opinion, and all over the place. There's not a consistent feel. You don't put these records on for one mood. It's not like a Sunday morning record. You're going to put the White Album on. Well, I would, or Tusk, or I would. Or a certain, even a party record. It's not a party record, either of these records. Although, the White Album, people are familiar with it, so maybe at the right sort of party, and if you're indulging in the right beverages, maybe. But two incredible records by two great bands. Interesting that the Beatles, they stayed intact, and when they weren't going to be intact, they went away. They didn't replace anybody. One of the few bands like that. Yes, there are other bands like that, but the Stones, replacements. Fleetwood Mac, many replacements. I could go the list down of all the bands that have been replacements, but the Beatles, like ABBA, when they called it a day, called it a night, they kept it intact. And the Beatles hardly brought anyone else on as guests on the records, once in a while, but very rarely, as we know. So the Beatles' White Album and Fleetwood Mac Tusk, two perfectly imperfect, disjointed double albums. That was fun. Mazzy loves you.